Chosen one, sit down right now. Whatever you are doing, wherever you are, stop, because what I am about to speak over your life in the next few minutes is not something you stumble into by accident. God is saying sit down, not because something is wrong, because something massive is about to hit your life and He needs you still enough to receive it. In the next few minutes, I am going to hand you the exact word heaven has been preparing for this moment in your life. I am going to walk you through the divine audit of everything that felt like delay, like loss, like silence, and I am going to show you what God was actually building inside every single one of those moments. And at the end, we are going to seal this new season with a declaration that closes the door on everything that was sent to stop you. Do not click away. Your future self is not asking you to stay. Your future self is commanding you, because what is about to be released over your life in this next season will require you to have heard this word first. You did not find this message by accident. The algorithm did not bring you here. God did. This is a divine appointment that was written into the architecture of your week before your week even began. I know what the last 72 hours have felt like. The atmosphere has not just been quiet, it has been pressing, like something enormous is standing just outside the door of your life, and you can feel the weight of it without being able to name it. Maybe you have been moving through your days with a strange heaviness in your chest that you cannot explain. Not sadness exactly, not fear exactly, something deeper like your spirit is bracing for impact. Or maybe you woke up at 3:00 inches the morning this week and just lay there in the dark, wide awake, feeling like you were standing at the edge of something you could not yet see. Or maybe it was yesterday, sitting somewhere ordinary, doing something routine, and out of nowhere this overwhelming sense hit you that everything in your life is about to change, that something is coming. You are not imagining it, and in the silence of not knowing what it is, the enemy has been working, because he cannot stop what God is releasing, but he can try to poison your posture before it arrives. Listen to the thoughts he has been whispering into that silence. He has been telling you that the reason things have felt so still, so heavy, so suspended is because you are not ready, that you have made too many mistakes this season, that you have been inconsistent, distracted, too slow to obey, and because of that, what God promised you has been handed to someone else. He has been replaying specific moments. Maybe that moment earlier this week, when you almost prayed but did not, when you almost made the call but talked yourself out of it, when you were supposed to move in faith but fear locked your feet. The accuser has taken those moments and built a courtroom inside your mind, and he has been presenting them as evidence that you have disqualified yourself from what is coming. But I need you to hear what heaven actually says about this moment. Romans 11:29 declares, "For the gifts and the calling of God are irrevocable." Irrevocable. That means it cannot be recalled, it cannot be reassigned, it cannot be revoked because of your hesitation, your inconsistency, your fear, or your silence. What God spoke over your life was not a conditional offer, it was a covenant decree, and a decree does not expire because the person it was written for had a hard week. The enemy has been framing your stillness as stagnation, but God calls it preparation. The heaviness you are feeling right now is not the weight of punishment. It is the weight of arrival. It is the atmospheric pressure that comes before something massive breaks through. You know how the air changes right before a storm? That dense, electric stillness that tells you something is coming that will alter the landscape? That is where you are standing right now. You think the moments this week where you pulled back, went quiet, chose not to react, chose not to explain yourself, chose to sit down instead of fight, you think those were failures of faith. You think your stillness was surrender. Let me reframe your reality right now. That was not weakness, that was positioning. God told you to sit down because he needed you out of the way of what he is about to do. Your restraint was not retreat, it was obedience. And that obedience just became the hinge point on which everything is about to turn. You are not behind. You are not disqualified. You are not starting over. You are moments away. Some messages don't just inform, they activate. If something stirred deep in your spirit just now, you may be ready to receive the Chosen One's blueprint. This sacred guide reveals the 8 divine patterns behind your calling, your suffering, and your destiny. It also comes with the full audiobook, so you can absorb it during prayer, rest, or quiet moments with God. And, for those called to speak His truth, you'll also receive Activating Your Prophet Mantle, a powerful bonus ebook for those carrying a prophetic assignment. The link is in the first pinned comment, but only for a limited time. Now, let's go deeper. Because what God is doing in your life right now is not random, and it is not small. There is a reason you feel like you've been held in place. There is a reason doors that should have opened stayed shut. There is a reason that no matter how hard you pushed, how much you prayed, how long you waited, something kept pressing you back into stillness. Not gently, not politely, but with a force that no amount of striving could overcome. You fasted and the answer didn't come. You prayed with tears on your face and the ceiling felt like concrete. You sought counsel, you stood on the word, you did everything you knew to do, and stillness. And most people interpret that stillness as rejection. They read it as abandonment. They begin to believe that maybe they misheard, maybe they misjudged, maybe God changed His mind. The silence starts to feel like a verdict. The closed doors start to feel like conclusions. And the longer it continues, the more the enemy moves in to offer his own interpretation of the delay, whispering that you were never really chosen, that the dream was just your ego dressed in spiritual language, that everyone else is moving forward because they were actually meant to, and you were not. But that is the first lie you have to break agreement with, because God does not change His mind about you. What looks like a pause is a preparation. What feels like a wall is actually a womb. Think about what happens inside a womb. There is no visibility. There is no movement that anyone on the outside can see. There is no applause. There is no announcement. There is no press release, no public declaration, no moment where the world is invited to witness what is taking place. But everything is being formed. Every organ, every function, every capacity that will be needed for the life ahead, it is all being assembled in the hidden place. The eyes that will one day see visions are forming in the dark. The voice that will one day declare the word of the Lord is being shaped in the silence. The hands that will one day lay hold of the promise are being prepared in a place where no one can yet see them. And the world only gets to see it when it's ready, not before, never before. God does not release unfinished things into finished arenas. He does not send you into the fullness of your assignment, carrying only half of what you need to sustain it. Because a calling without the character to hold it is not a blessing. It is a burden that will eventually break what it was supposed to build. But here's where it goes deeper. It's not just that you're being prepared, it's that you've been fighting the preparation. You've been asking God to open the door while simultaneously resisting the process that qualifies you to walk through it. You've been praying for the promotion while quietly despising the refining. You've been asking for the platform while running from the pruning that would make your roots deep enough to sustain the weight of what standing on that platform would require. And God, in His mercy, hasn't exposed you, He's protected you. Because if He had released you before the character was built, before the humility was forged, before the wounds were healed enough that you wouldn't lead from them, the very thing you were called to carry would have crushed you. Not because the calling was wrong, but because the carrier wasn't ready. And God loves you too much to let that happen. So He presses you back, not to punish you, to protect what He placed inside you. This is where the story of Moses becomes something more than a Sunday school lesson. Moses was pulled from the water as an infant, a picture of divine rescue from the very beginning, a foreshadowing of the deliverer he would become. Raised in Pharaoh's palace, educated in the most sophisticated courts of his time, surrounded by power, shaped by privilege, formed in the halls of the very empire his people were enslaved by. Educated, positioned, powerful. On the surface, he had everything the world would say he needed to fulfill his calling. He had access, he had influence, he had proximity to the throne, and in his own strength, he tried to do what he knew God had called him to do. He stepped out before the appointed time and killed an Egyptian. He thought he was ready. He had assessed the situation, identified the injustice, and acted on it. In his mind, this was the beginning of the movement. This was the moment God had been building toward. But God knew there was a wilderness still required. 40 years in the desert, tending sheep on the backside of nowhere. No crown, no palace, no reputation, no audience, no platform, no acknowledgement of the greatness that had once been attached to his name. Just silence and sand, and the slow, patient, sometimes agonizing death of every version of himself that would have gotten in the way of the divine assignment. Moses, the prince, had to die so that Moses, the deliverer, could live. The man formed in Pharaoh's palace had to be unmade so that the man commissioned by God could be remade. Every layer of self-sufficiency had to be stripped. Every expectation of how the plan should unfold had to be surrendered. Every idea Moses carried about his own timing, his own methods, his own qualifications, all of it had to go. And only then, only after 40 years of the wilderness doing what the palace never could, did the burning bush appear. The burning bush didn't appear until Moses had been emptied of everything he thought made him qualified. It appeared precisely when Moses had stopped trying to make something happen in his own strength and had finally, fully settled into the rhythm of tending what was in front of him. And what you need to understand is this: God doesn't call the prepared. God prepares the called. The calling came before the preparation. The anointing preceded the equipping. And the wilderness you've been in is not a detour from your destiny. It is the most direct path to it. And this leads us to something most people miss entirely. The enemy knows your assignment before you do. This is not a casual observation. This is a spiritual reality with profound implications for everything you have suffered. This is why the attack came so early. This is why the confusion started in childhood. This is why the rejection, the abandonment, the betrayal, it didn't wait until you were grown, until you were visible, until you were standing on a stage somewhere declaring the word of the Lord. It came for you when you were young and unguarded, before you had the language to name what was happening to you, before you had the armor to withstand it, before you even knew you were carrying something worth targeting. The enemy studies divine blueprints and launches preemptive strikes. He knows that it is far easier to wound a child than to defeat a warrior. It is far more effective to plant seeds of shame in a young heart than to confront a grown soul who has learned to stand in their identity. And so the attack came early. The wounds came early. The confusion, the displacement, the feeling of being wrong or broken or out of place, it came early, and it was not accidental. Every giant in your life has been a response to a territory that already belongs to you. Giants don't occupy worthless land, they occupy promised land. And the very size of what came against you is the most accurate measure of what God placed inside you. Stay with me, because what's coming next is the layer that most people are not ready to confront. You've been carrying a wound that you've mistaken for wisdom. Let that land. There is a place inside you, not on the surface, not where others can easily see it, but deep in the interior of your being, where the early experiences wrote their conclusions on the walls of your heart. A place that was hurt so deeply, so early, so unexpectedly, that your mind built a fortress around it and called the fortress discernment. And from the outside, it is almost indistinguishable from maturity. It looks like caution. It sounds like measured spiritual insight. It feels like the kind of protection that only hard-won experience can produce. But underneath it, underneath the measured responses and the walls and the controlled detachment, underneath the way you hold people at a certain distance and keep your deepest hopes carefully guarded, there is a child who decided that the safest way to survive was to stop fully expecting anything from God. Because if you don't expect, you can't be disappointed. If you don't believe completely, the fall won't break you. If you hold your hope loosely enough, it can't be taken from you in a way that destroys you. And you've been operating from that agreement for years, not because you lack faith, but because something in you has been trying to protect you from the full weight of hope. Because hope has hurt you before, and the heart does not easily forget what hope cost it. But faith without full surrender is just managed belief. And managed belief will never produce the breakthrough you are standing at the edge of. You can manage your belief and survive, but you cannot manage your belief and thrive the way God intends. Because managed belief keeps one hand on the promise and one hand on the escape route. It declares the word with your mouth while quietly preparing for the possibility that it won't happen. And God is not calling you to manage your belief. He is calling you to release control of the outcome entirely and trust the one who authored it. Not the version of trust that feels comfortable, not the version that still leaves you with a plan B, but the kind of trust that looks like stepping onto the water when there is nothing beneath your feet except the word He already spoke. Now once that clicks, everything shifts. Because you begin to realize that the waiting was never the problem. The waiting was the gift. Every season you cried through was stitching something into you that no seminary could teach, no mentor could impart, no shortcut could produce. Every night you sat alone, wondering if God had forgotten you. He was writing something into your spirit that required the quiet to take hold. Every moment of confusion that felt like spiritual failure was actually spiritual formation, the kind that cannot be rushed, cannot be downloaded, cannot be received in comfort. Suffering, when submitted to God, becomes curriculum. Not the kind that punishes, but the kind that produces. And you have been in the most advanced classroom He offers. The curriculum of the hidden season, the coursework of the wilderness, the thesis of the fire. And the degree you are earning, the degree that no institution can grant and no title can replicate, is the degree of a soul that has been proven in the deep places. A soul that knows not just about God's faithfulness, but knows it from the inside of a cave, from the bottom of a pit, from the center of a season that had no visible end. Think of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, 3 young men who refused to bow to a golden image, even when the consequence was a furnace heated 7 times hotter than it had ever been heated before. 7 times. As if the ordinary heat wasn't enough, as if the enemy needed to make absolutely certain there would be nothing left of them when it was over. They were thrown into a furnace that was so hot it killed the men who threw them in. Let that breathe for a moment. The very agents of the destruction were destroyed by the thing they wielded. And yet, when Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego emerged, and they did emerge, because what God protects cannot be consumed, the Bible says, not even the smell of smoke was on them, not a thread was burned, not a hair was singed. The only thing the fire consumed was the rope that had them bound. They walked out of the furnace freer than when they walked in. They walked out of the furnace with a testimony that the entire kingdom would have to reckon with, and there was a 4th man seen walking with them in the fire, one whose appearance was like the Son of God. God did not keep them out of the fire. God met them in it. And the fire that the enemy designed as their ending became the very place where they encountered God in a dimension they had never accessed before. Sometimes, God allows the furnace not to destroy you, but to burn off everything that was limiting you. The fire you walked through didn't take anything from you that you were supposed to keep. Every loss you experienced in the fire was a rope being burned. Every relationship that fell apart in the heat was a chain coming off. Every version of yourself that couldn't survive the furnace was a version of yourself that was never meant to enter your destiny. And this brings us to the real turning point, because what comes next is the layer that will reframe every closed door that ever confused you, every delay that ever made you question your calling, every moment of stillness that felt like God had gone silent. The thing you thought was blocking your blessing was never external. Read that again and let it reach the places that have been looking outward for answers. It was never the person who betrayed you, even though the betrayal was real, even though the wound it left was deep, and the consequences of it touched every area of your life. It was never the job that didn't come through, never the ministry that wasn't recognized, never the vision that no one around you could see clearly enough to champion. It was never the relationship that crumbled, or the opportunity that slipped through your fingers, or the timing that seemed to work against you at every turn. All of those things were symptoms. They were the outward expressions of an inward condition that had never been fully addressed. The root, the actual root, is an unresolved identity crisis. Not a surface-level uncertainty about your gifts or your direction. A deep, foundational, persistent question about whether you are truly who God said you are. You don't yet fully believe what God said about you in secret. You have a public confession and a private doubt. In your prayers, in your declarations, in the moments where faith rises and the Spirit stirs, you declare yourself chosen. You speak the word over your life with conviction that feels absolutely real. But in the quiet of your mind, in the hours before dawn when the declarations have faded and it is just you and the silence and the unfiltered truth of what you actually believe, you are still asking the question, am I really? Did he really mean me? When he said chosen, when he said purposed, when he said known before the foundation of the world, was that really for me? Or am I borrowing a promise that belongs to someone else? And that question, as small and as human as it sounds, is the crack through which delay enters. Because God cannot fully manifest a destiny in a vessel that is still arguing about whether the vessel is worthy. Not because he is withholding, not because he is waiting for you to perform your way into deserving it, but because the fullness of what he is releasing requires a container that has settled the question. A vessel that is at war with its own identity cannot hold what heaven is trying to pour into it. The breakthrough is not waiting on God. God has been waiting on you to fully receive what he already declared. He declared it before you were born. He declared it before you made your first mistake, before you carried your first wound, before the first voice told you that you were less than what heaven called you. The declaration stands. The question is whether you will finally agree with it. But let me challenge you with something deeper still. The reason the identity question is still open is not because you haven't prayed enough, or read enough, or fasted enough. It's not because your spiritual disciplines have been insufficient, or your faith has been too small. It's because there is someone in your life, or someone in your past, whose voice is still louder in your spirit than God's voice is. Someone who got there first. Someone who told you who you were before you had the strength or the language or the spiritual grounding to disagree. A parent who spoke diminishment over you so consistently that it became the air you breathed. A teacher who dismissed what was already forming in you, who looked at the seed and called it nothing because they couldn't see the tree. A partner who used your vulnerability against you and redefined your worth in the currency of their own brokenness. A leader you trusted and opened your spirit to, who handled what was sacred in you carelessly. Someone whose words went in so deep that they wired themselves into how you see your own reflection, not just in a mirror, but in God's eyes. And even though you've forgiven them, even if you've done the work, spoken the declarations, released them in prayer with genuine sincerity, the wiring is still there. You're still filtering God's voice through their frequency. You're still measuring His words against theirs, still bracing for the moment where His affirmation will be undercut by the old recording that plays in the background of your soul. Healing is not just the absence of pain. Healing is the recalibration of your inner ear. It is learning to hear God's voice cleanly, without the static of old wounds distorting the signal. It is the slow, sacred process of dismantling the receivers that were tuned to the wrong frequency and rebuilding them around the only voice that has ever told you the truth about who you are. And that recalibration takes stillness. It takes the kind of quiet that cannot be rushed or engineered. It takes a season where the noise of striving has been removed and you are left with nothing but you and God and the truth He has been trying to get through to you, which is exactly what this season is. This season of stillness, the very one that has felt like your greatest setback, is actually the most intentional, most carefully designed, most divinely necessary season of your entire journey. Now here is the part you probably didn't expect. The thing that has been delaying you is not your weakness, it is your gift. The very thing God placed inside you, the anointing, the sensitivity, the depth of perception, the capacity to feel and carry and intercede, the ability to sense what others cannot sense and see what others cannot see. That gift, unguarded, became the point of entry for confusion, for manipulation, for spiritual fatigue that runs so deep it sometimes feels like it lives in your bones. Because the gift that allows you to feel deeply also means that wounds go deeper. The sensitivity that makes you extraordinary in intercession also makes you vulnerable to carrying weights that were never yours to carry. The discernment that lets you read the spiritual atmosphere also means you feel the full force of atmospheres that are dark, heavy, and oppressive. Your gift, without the full armor of your established identity, became a liability. But here is the truth that changes everything. The enemy does not attack what is ordinary. He does not spend resources on what poses no threat. He targets what is dangerous. He mobilizes against what has the potential to dismantle his assignments and advance the kingdom of God in ways that cannot be stopped. And everything that makes you feel like too much, or not enough, or different, or strange, or out of place in rooms where everyone else seems to fit, that is not evidence of a defect. That is the fingerprint of divine design. You were never the problem. You were always the prize. The target was always on your back because the territory was always in your future. And when that lands, when it really lands, not just as a pleasant idea that you hold loosely, but as a settled, anchored, unshakable, knowing the way you carry yourself will shift. The way you enter a room will shift because you will stop apologizing for the space you take up and start understanding that you were placed in that room with intentionality and authority. The way you receive a word from God will shift because you will no longer need 3 confirmations and the agreement of 5 people before you trust what He whispered to your spirit in the early hours of the morning. You will stop waiting for permission from the world to be what heaven has already commissioned. You will stop shrinking to fit into spaces that were never meant to contain you. You will stop performing your calling for audiences that were never your assignment, and you will start moving with the quiet, settled, unforced confidence of someone who has finally agreed with what God said about them before time began. So I want you to hear this with every part of you that has been tired, with every part of you that almost gave up not once, but multiple times, in multiple seasons, in multiple moments where the weight of the waiting was almost more than you could hold. With every part of you that sat in the silence of an empty room or a sleepless night and wondered if the dream was still alive, or if it had quietly died somewhere in the gap between the promise and the present reality. I want every one of those parts of you to receive what I'm about to say next. God said, sit down, not as a rebuke, not as a demotion, not as evidence that you misunderstood the assignment or that your faith was insufficient, or that the season you endured was a consequence of some spiritual failure you still haven't identified. God said, Sit down, because what's about to hit your life is so significant, so weighty, so beyond anything you've manufactured on your own or engineered through your striving, that he needed you still enough to receive it without dropping it. He needed you positioned, not just moving. He needed you rooted, not just reaching. The magnitude of what's coming required the depth of what you went through. You couldn't have received at 20 what he is releasing at 30. You couldn't have carried at the beginning of the journey what you are now capable of holding. The suffering built the container. The wilderness expanded the capacity. The fire burned away everything that would have caused you to mishandle the gift when it finally arrived. And you are standing right now, in this exact moment, at the threshold of the appointed time. Not almost there, not a few more seasons away. At the threshold, place your hand on your heart and declare this with me. I release every agreement I made with rejection. I release every lie that told me I was too late, too broken, too forgotten. I break the silence that was never mine to keep. I recalibrate my hearing to the voice of the Most High, and I silence every frequency that was never sent from heaven. I receive my identity not as the world assigned it, not as my past confirmed it, but as God declared it before I was formed. I am chosen. I am prepared. I am positioned. What was taken from me is being restored. What was delayed is now being released. And I walk forward from this moment knowing that the stillness was not my punishment, it was my promotion. I am ready. I am open. And I am exactly where God needs me to be. If this message confirmed what your spirit already knew, share it with someone who is in their waiting season. Leave a comment below telling God you receive it. Just say, I receive it, and watch what shifts. You were not meant to find this message by accident. You were meant to find it right now.